Tensions in the Middle East have just reached a breaking point. Iran has reportedly laid a fresh round of naval mines across the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil chokepoint, as oil prices continue to soar. It comes as a third US aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, arrives in the Middle East to assist Donald Trump's blockade and crackdown on Tehran-linked ships. Trump vowed to shoot and kill any boat suspected of laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. However, US intelligence is reportedly not certain if all of the mines from the first round have been found and destroyed. While Washington sources say the US knows exactly how many new mines have been deployed, they've so far refused to reveal that number. According to the Pentagon, it could take 6 months to fully clear the Strait of Hormuz of the mines deployed by the Iranian military. All of which raises a bigger question: are Iran's low-cost mines limiting the options of a military superpower?
The mine threat is part of the threat, but I think we also need to look at the tactical situation here. For certain, mines are not circular, knobbly things that perhaps people might have seen in war films from the First and Second World War these days. They are much more sophisticated. Some sit on the seabed, some float around, some are mobile. So it is quite a sophisticated challenge. And although I've just said that the straits are only a couple of 100 miles long and 20 or 30 miles wide, there's a three-dimensional area. You've also got the depth. And actually, this is a massive volume of water to hide mines in. Now, for sure, the Americans and the Allies have a lot of mine hunting capabilities. But even yesterday, the British Royal Navy and the French Royal Navy were suggesting it could take 6 months to completely clear this. So mines absolutely are a challenge, and these sort of mines can destroy, even the most powerful American naval ships. Now, the other thing to consider, and I think a lot of people are suggesting that, the American aircraft carriers, if they tried to go through the Straits of Hormuz, these multi-billion pound warships could be destroyed by very cheap mines. Well, I think that is a possibility. But from a tactical perspective, there is absolutely no reason why the USS George W. Bush that is just coming into the area would want to go in the Straits anyway. They are there to project power. They have fighter jets and fighter bombers on them. They are, in effect, mobile sort of airfields. So there is actually no reason for them to go there. They can station close to the Straits of Hormuz and then use their fighters to project power. And the other element, of course, is that the US has a lot of bases in the Gulf anyway, in Qatar, in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. So there is no real reason to actually have the aircraft carriers steaming up and down the Gulf. But, of course, one is not at all surprised that the Iranians are making a lot of score out of this, saying that these mines are stalling these billion-pound warships. Yeah, that's not the case. They sort of wouldn't want to go there anyway. Iran has said that this Straits of Hormuz are a point of honor for them, but it's staggering that when the Americans were planning the attack on Iran, that they didn't first secure the Straits of Hormuz, months ago. I mean, I think it is obvious to every military planner who has been involved in this sort of thing that the vital ground, in other words, the absolutely key terrain that anybody needs to control in this area is the Straits of Hormuz. Now, when you do your military planning and you identify this vital ground, critical ground, it's always the first thing that you try and secure. So why on earth the Americans didn't do that in the beginning? Now, when we talk about demining the Straits, I think what the British and the American navies are saying is once there is a ceasefire. Now, as Trump has pointed out, there are lots of these little fast patrol boats by the Iranian Republican Guard Corps that can shoot around very quickly and attack big warships that are trying to do the demining, or even minesweepers that are doing this. And, almost no end of US air power is going to stop that. So absolutely, the Iranians have, it is their absolute gold card, the Straits of Hormuz. It just doesn't seem that that the Americans can really do much about it at the moment, which is why I think the ceasefire has been extended, and the negotiation it seems to be stalled, but it is all about the Straits of Hormuz. And I suppose if you put yourself in the position of the Iranian mullahs, the Iranian regime, why on earth would they give up any control of the Straits of Hormuz? Because without it, that they have no power, they have no dog in this fight at all. And I should think, the planners in the Pentagon, the military planners, must be tearing their hair out that they're in this position. But it often happens in warfare, that one side that might be much weaker, but if it controls ground, which affects the whole operation, they're still in the driving seat. And that's exactly the position with Iran at the moment. As far as clearing the mines, when that opportunity comes, it seems pretty clear that the Americans, firstly, are going to need the European navies, and secondly, really want them to do that. I expect President Trump doesn't want to be distracted, or his navy doesn't want to be distracted by having to do a task which is going to take a long time. There is an awful lot of sea rather, to cover, because they've got to make sure, absolutely certain, that every single mine has been neutralized. And it's difficult. There is so much propaganda and disinformation, out there at the moment. Some people are talking about thousands of mines in the Straits of Hormuz. Some are talking about a few. I mean, it actually doesn't really matter. Whoever goes to clear it has to clear the whole area, and it is a very, very large area to clear. The European navies, like the French and the British and others, do have significant capability in mine clearing. Britain already has some drone mine clearers based in the Gulf at the moment that no doubt will be used, but also a whole bunch of mine sweepers, small warships that do this task as well. But even with the European navies involved, it is thought that it could take up to 6 months to make sure that it's absolutely clear. So everybody is absolutely focused on the Straits. It is the key area. Whoever controls the Straits really controls the whole conflict in this area. And at the moment, it's the Iranians and not the Americans who are controlling it. It'll take an awful long time to clear the mines, because there is a large body of water to clear. Now, I think the Pentagon and the European countries are saying it will take 6 months, because they're saying clearing, every stretch of water, if you like, the whole planopy of above the water and below the water. Now, to get ships moving again, they don't necessarily need to do that. They a little bit like on the land, going through a minefield, you clear a few routes to allow your forces to move through the minefield, and then at a later date, you clear the rest of the mines. So I don't think it will take 6 months to say clear a couple of lanes, if you like, through the straits where ships could start moving, but to clear the whole place, that's where the 6 months comes. So, I think European allies are trying to make it clear to the Americans that this is a long commitment that they're being asked to do, and to do the whole job will take 6 months. But I'm sure in a few weeks they could probably clear a lane or two to allow the ships to start moving again. I mean, there are really two ways the straits can be cleared. They can either be cleared through negotiation with the Iranians, that they are going to allow the Americans, the allies, to clear the mines out of it and to police the straits. So there is that way of doing it, which no doubt is the preferred way. Or the other way is to do it what we call in contact or under fire. So if there's no agreement with the Iranians, and there's been much talk and no doubt a lot of planning by the Americans, they will have to do it in contact aggressively. And in order to do that, they are going to have to put boots on the ground on the Iranian side, that sort of 300-mile stretch. Now, we know that the Marine Expeditionary Unit is in the area. We know the 82nd Airborne Division is in the area. Now, these are exactly the forces that they are likely to use. And no doubt that is why they are in the Gulf now, as a bargaining chip, but also, if required, to get on the ground. Now, this will be an exceptionally challenging task. One assumes that the Iranian Republican Guard Corps will try and attack them and prevent them doing this. The might of US air power in the region are now, even more reinforced with the USS George W. Bush, the aircraft carrier. They can probably do this, but to sustain this more than a few weeks or perhaps a few months will be a massive challenge, even for the Americans. So I'm sure the ideal will be through a negotiated settlement, but the Americans have got a plan for a non-negotiated settlement and do it by force as well, which, must be the least favoured option. Trump's latest shoot to kill order is very much focused on what he calls wise guy ships running around with guns. These are small boats that are patrolling the Straits of Hormuz with the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, their specialist troops in them. And they really are preventing, whatever Trump is saying, preventing the Straits of Hormuz being used at the moment. So, that is a real concern. We're in a complete stalemate. Trump or American ships are picketing Iranian ports, preventing any Iranian ships leaving or arriving, hence trying to cut off the flow of money into Iran to pursue this war. But in a similar fashion, there's no tankers full of oil getting out to the rest of the world. So we are at an impasse, as it were, although the ceasefire has been extended, which is very much to be welcomed. It's having no impact on the world economy as such and the price of oil. And the Straits of Hormuz, the Iranian government have only said yesterday it's a piece of honor for them to control them and keep them shut. And they're really showing how easy they can do it and really how, challenging it is for the Americans or any others to open them. Now, this week as well, the French and the British have led an alliance of about 30 or 40 other countries who are going to police the Straits of Hormuz once they are open again. In other words, once they're cleared of mines and everything else. And that would seem a sensible thing for the rest of the world to do. But at the moment, it doesn't really see any way that those straits are going to be open, because the Iranians know that they are absolutely their gold card. They're absolutely got the Americans exactly where they want them. And, Trump has tried various means to open the Straits of Hormuz, but they remain firmly closed at the moment. It's proving so difficult to open the Straits of Hormuz, really, for the geography of the area. It is, for its sort of length of roughly 300 miles or so, it's only 20 to 30 miles wide, which means that there are a whole host of ways that Iran can keep them shut. There is, of course, the mines, which it seems unclear, it seems ambiguous coming out of Iran, quite how many mines there are and where they are. The fact that people don't know really puts great fear. Some of these oil tankers are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they absolutely can't afford to lose them to a mine. So there is the mine issue. But also, being so narrow, as again the Iranian regime has said, the IRG Corps, their specialist troops, are hiding in caves along the coast, waiting to attack ships with missiles. And over such short distance, they'd have a variety of missiles to do that. So even with all the modern military wizardry that the Americans have at their hands, they can't 100% guarantee safe passage of any ships through there because of the possibility of mines, possibility of these what Trump's calling wise guy ships running around, small, fast patrol boats, and the missile teams based on the Iranian coast. They're in the challenge, really. And Trump knows that unless he can absolutely guarantee safe passage, he can't take that risk, and he can't do that at the moment. Well, it depends how much damage is done to the US military. Really depends on how long this operation goes on. Now, it's pretty clear that there is an awful lot of US military firepower in the Gulf at the moment, and they've already fired off a lot of military ordnance, loads of missiles and bombs. Even a force the size of the American military, cannot absorb that sort of use of force and ammunition over a protracted time. And certainly the US military is almost entirely focused on the Middle East, on the Gulf at the moment. There's very little support happening in the Ukraine war, and I expect around the rest of the world, the US is patrolling it probably with submarines and a few other ships. So it is true that that the US, would not be able to do another operation like this, in the near future, which no doubt the Chinese and the Russians are looking at pretty closely. And everything coming out of Moscow at the moment, suggests that the President Putin is delighted that the Americans are so engaged in the war in Iran, because it's very much keeping him off his back. So, I don't think, whatever rhetoric comes out of President Trump's mouth at the moment about the force of the US, they are very much focused in the Middle East and would be challenged to focus elsewhere. And no doubt the military planners in the Pentagon are trying to make sure that this is resolved as quickly as possible, so that the US military can get back to its sort of normal business, as it were, as patrolling the seas and the land around the world to try and reduce risk. But I don't think anybody should be any doubt that this is a huge drain on US military resources at the moment.
It's been 8 weeks that the U.S. now has been involved with Iran. You had initially said it would be 4 to 6 weeks.
Well, I hope that, but I also took a little break. I gave them a break. And remember this, I want to make the best deal. I don't want to put that kind of a timetable on it, but it'll go pretty quickly. And we'll have the strait opened up. Now, right now, we have it closed. We have total control of the strait.
On the war with Iran, how long are you willing to wait until you get a unified response?
Don't rush me, Jeff. But their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft is gone, all of their anti-aircraft machinery is gone. Maybe they loaded up a little bit during the 2-week hiatus, but we'll knock that out in about 1 day if they did.
It's been incredibly difficult to predict how this war is going to evolve, especially when you have President Trump, who is, I wouldn't say unpredictable, but his ambiguity and his change of mind I expect makes it very difficult for others to make decisions based on that. I think there is real politique here as well. Whatever President Trump says, he is politically very focused on the primaries in the US, which are due later this year. It is pretty clear that the majority of people in the US may well have supported Trump when he was elected last year, but that is not the case now. So I think the real politique means that whatever Trump is saying, he needs this over fairly quickly. Now, that is either going to be through negotiation, which one anticipates is most likely and the least worst option, or President Trump has got to go full in with his military. And, he is being egged on by the Israelis, who only yesterday were saying they were waiting for the order from Trump to blow the Iranians back to the Stone Ages. So there's an awful lot playing here, but ultimately, I think President Trump knows he's got to get this resolved fairly quickly. Otherwise, his political future is in serious doubt. And that seems to be the most compelling thing that is going to affect the way that Trump deals with this. Although even yesterday he said he's in no hurry, I'm not sure that's entirely the case. So I would expect we will see a lot more political movement, a lot more discussions between the two sides and whether the Pakistanis can pull it together, we shall see, or whether there is a sort of another option that's on the line. But yeah, I think it's going to go on for a few weeks, but I'd be very surprised if it goes on much beyond the summer of this year.